believe in the ripple effect.
What's up? Another episode of Ripple Effect Podcast. I'm your host, Rica the Rendes, also known as Ricky Brands, and a great episode for you today. Today we have returning guest, another great conversation with attorney Brian Festa, also known as one of the founders of We the Patriots USA, which is a phenomenal organization. You'll learn a little bit more about it during our conversation if you're not already familiar with him and the work that he does. And if you're a parent, a person, somebody who's having issues with medical freedom or vaccine issues with school systems or whatever it may be, please listen carefully to what Brian Festa does, what the organization does, and maybe he can help you. And if you do reach out, please let him know you're a listener of the show, and he'll definitely take care of you. Also, I want to apologize about the delay of these releases of these shows. I've been a little bit behind with getting these shows out. Life's been super crazy with sports, coaching, trying to fit these podcasts in. Obviously, all the other things I do, like play basketball, soccer, go to the gym, obviously my full-time job. And then, of course, you have to find quality time to spend with your loved ones, your friends, your family, your kids, and do the most important things of connecting with them, being present with them, and not overloading yourself with busyness and not ever really being present. So all these things are hard to balance sometimes, so sometimes the podcast takes a back seat, and I apologize for that. I've also been a little bit under the weather. It's always around this time of year with the school season starting, and then also with the cold weather coming, that viruses transmit a little quicker and a little bit more often, and little colds go around the community and around the household. But I think we're back at it. I'm almost at 100%, and I'm ready to start putting out episodes much more often. For everyone who constantly downloads these episodes when they do randomly release, from the bottom of my heart, I really appreciate it. Also, everybody who supports the show, people who have gone to the merch store and purchased hoodies for this cold weather that's coming, and also mugs and t-shirts, and just representing the Ripple Effect podcast wherever in the world you're listening to it. It means a lot to me. Everybody who contribute either monthly on Patreon, which is awesome. I really appreciate everyone who does that monthly, even when the episode slows down a little bit. I don't forget about you guys, and it's always really appreciated. So I just wanted to take a second to kind of remind you guys that I do appreciate every penny. I know things are expensive, the economy is not good, the future's uncertain, and it is a little bit scary, but the fact that you take even just a little bit, if you can, to support the show, it's really appreciated. And also, let me remind you, let's try to get this intro done quickly. I know I'm ranting a little bit, but this is a Value for Value show. If you get some value out of the show, please consider giving some value back. I know I've put out over 400 something episodes. I'm sure there's a lot of episodes out there in the archives that you enjoy and that maybe some that you've missed. Definitely go on my website, go to the search engine and search topics you like JFK or nutrition, health, vaccines, whatever topic you're looking into. Go on my website and find amazing archives of amazing past guests that have hit on those topics. But if you get value out of this conversation or any of those conversations I've brought to you throughout the years, please consider giving some value back. You can rate the show, review the show. I'm on tons of different platforms: iTunes, Spotify, Podcast Addict, Minds, Odyssey, Rumble, Rockfin. So there's tons of different ways of supporting the Ripple Effect podcast. Just subscribe to the show wherever you watch or listen to the show. Give thumbs up, leave comments, share it with friends and family, and that goes a long way. So that's a great way of helping the show if you can't financially support the show. But if you can financially support the show, there's tons of ways of doing so. You can check out our new merch store with tons of new stuff, and it ships quick. It's all really reasonably priced. It's high quality stuff, and you can get it quickly, and you can represent the Ripple Effect podcast, and you can support a show that you love. Maybe even start a conversation with friends or family or somebody at the gym or somebody at the supermarket who also listens to the show and recognizes your shirt. And you can find all that on my website, or you can go directly to the merch store by using the URL, the Ripple Effect Podcast merch.com. And like I always tell you, these links are also in the show description. Other ways of supporting the show is supporting us on Patreon. You can support us monthly, and literally you could support us as little as $1 a month, and it goes a long way. If a small percentage of the people who listen and watch to the Ripple Effect podcast contribute as little as $1 a month, I could easily do the show full time. I mean, I get thousands and thousands of downloads right after uploading a show. I get tons of views on Rumble and Rockfin and Band.video and all the platforms I'm on. And if you added that all together, if 1% of the people who are watching and listening contribute as little as $1, and believe me, we go to the gas station, convenience store, we throw away $1 all the time for something that brings very little value to your life, on a snack or a drink or whatever, or a scratch ticket, whatever it may be. Or with $1, you can help change the journey of my life, the journey of the show, by helping contribute to the goal of eventually doing the show full time. So please consider joining our Patreon page or sending a one-time donation via Venmo or PayPal or crypto. And all these links, like I said, are on my website or in the show description. And from the bottom of my heart, everyone who does send a one-time donation, I randomly get it on a weekend or just a day that maybe I'm busy and running around, and then I get that little reminder that somebody really cares about the show. It means a lot. It's a positive motivation, and it keeps me going. So thank you from the bottom of my heart, because I know that, like I said, everyone is dealing with high prices, uncertainty of the future. So to go out of your way to contribute a little bit, I'm sure giving a little bit to a show that you love makes you feel good, but it also makes me feel really good knowing that there's people out there who take the time to even do that. And then, of course, we also have a couple sponsors. And all these sponsors are past guests of the show, people that I'm friends of, people that I'm a fan of, people who I've been promoting or a fan of their work for a long time. And we'll start off with one of the most important ones, that's Content Safe. And what Content Safe does, besides run my website and really are kind of my IT go-to people if I need help with anything, they also sync all my video channels together. So as these other alternative channels like Rockfin and Rumble and BitChute and all these other platforms, mines, get bigger and bigger, it gets harder and harder to upload on all these platforms. So if you're considering expanding your YouTube channel or expanding your podcast, your show, if you're any type of content creator and you want to save tons of hours with uploading time, please consider reaching out to Content Safe. Let them know you're a listener of the Ripple Effect podcast, and they'll definitely hook you up. And what they can do is that they can help you upload to one platform like a YouTube or Odyssey, and then magically that episode, the description, the thumbnail, everything appears on all the video platforms you're on. So please reach out to Content Safe. Like I said, let them know you're a listener, and they'll definitely take care of you. The next sponsor is the University of Reason and the very popular autonomy courses created by Richard Grove. And if you're at a crossroads in life, if you're looking to expand on some skills, maybe you need some food for thought, maybe you feel like you stop learning and you want to learn some new stuff, you want to connect with a new community, maybe a like-minded, freedom-minded, libertarian-minded community, and you're looking just to do something different. Maybe you feel like you're a hamster on a wheel. Check out the autonomy courses, check out the University of Reason, use the links in the show description, and you can help yourself and support a show that you love, the Ripple Effect podcast, at the same time. And then, of course, last but not least, it's a sponsor that I use, especially when I'm sick or if I have a stomach bug and I need to hydrate. It tastes awesome. I use it if I'm working out, if I'm playing sports. It's Element Electrolytes, and it has no artificial colors, no artificial flavors. It's sweetened with the stevia leaf. It has the right dosage to make a difference of the electrolytes that you need. So potassium, sodium, and magnesium. It has premium versions of those ingredients, and it tastes awesome. You can put in your water, like we've been talking about a little bit with it getting colder. They also offer mocha flavor and chocolate flavors to put in hot drinks like a coffee, and it's a great way of staying hydrated. It's a great way of optimizing your mind and body, and it helps with so many symptoms that are due to dehydration. And that's like headaches, muscle fatigue, soreness. And of course, it can help your performance if you're playing sports or at the gym. It can help with cramping. It can help get a couple more reps out. It can help by not needing to drink as much water while you're performing. And I know there's a lot of hydration options out there, but a lot of them have similar recipes of not enough of the ingredients you need to really make a difference. They usually have sugar, or if they don't have sugar, they have some cheap artificial sweetener. And even though some of them will say they have the same ingredients as Element, they have magnesium, potassium, sodium, but it's not premium ingredients and the dosages are too low to really make a difference. So please check out Element Electrolytes. Go on their website. They have tons of information. They have information on how it can help if you're a mother and breastfeeding, how it can actually help with milk production. And you can find all that information and much more on their website. Check out the links in the show description. Please use a link in the show description or on my website, because you can get the product, you get a free gift with every purchase, and you also support the Ripple Effect podcast. So if you're looking to stay hydrated, have something healthy that tastes good on a regular basis, check out Element Electrolytes, created by Rob Wolf, who's a OG in the nutrition and health community. He's worked with professional athletes. He's been ahead of the curve with CrossFit, with keto, with paleo, now with electrolytes. And he's also an amazing guest on the Ripple Effect podcast. If you haven't listened to his past appearances, please do, and you can learn a lot more about the product. And he's also been on Rogan and many other amazing podcasts, and he has a podcast of his own. So check out Rob Wolf. He's just a wealth of knowledge and information in regards to health and nutrition, diet, what you should be eating, what you shouldn't be eating, what the science actually says. And he also doesn't mind going down some rabbit holes like we do on this show from time to time. So check that out. Also check out my other show, The Union of Unwanted, which I do with my brothers from different mothers, Sam Tripoli, Midnight Mike, and Charlie Robinson. I'll put links to our new Linktree because we got kicked off Linktree for some reason. Union of Unwanted got kicked off Linktree out of nowhere. But we have a new one. It's up. It's an easy way of finding links to our merch, to all our websites, all the places you can watch and listen to the show. Also, all the social media platforms we're on, and much more. I'll put that in the show description, and the link is also on my website. That's it, guys. Finally, sorry about the long intro. Enjoy this amazing conversation with returning guest, attorney Brian Festa, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Peace.
Yeah, so thanks a lot, Ricky, for having me back. Wow, it's been so long, I can't even remember how many things that have happened since the last time we spoke. Most recently, we had a victory in court in New Mexico. I'm sure you followed the story of the governor of New Mexico that did a gun grab and took away everyone's Second Amendment rights in the city of Albuquerque. It just feels like, you know, she has the authority to take away a constitutional right that is actually a God-given right. As you know, none of these rights in the Constitution come from the Constitution. They're actually endowed to us by our creator, and she feels like she has the power. Michelle Lujan Grisham has the power to just unilaterally take away our right to keep and bear arms. So she did that. We, within 24 hours, we filed for a temporary restraining order, as well as a preliminary and permanent injunction against her, declaratory judgment against her. We had the TRO hearing on that temporary restraining order on Wednesday. It was Wednesday of last week, September 13th, and it was granted. It was granted right there because that's sort of an emergency type of hearing. It's not one of those things we have to wait for the judge's decision to come out weeks or months later. That's decided right there in the courtroom. So he took a recess, came back from the recess, and explained why he was granting our request for a temporary restraining order. So we were able to get the governor of New Mexico stopped. She came back last Friday and issued another version of it, like a narrower version, but that was actually included in the original version, meaning restricting carry on just the state parks and school playgrounds and school grounds and things like that, which they were already restricted on school grounds. But she added like a narrower version of it, which we think is really just, she's trying to, I don't know. She's trying to get around the temporary restraining order, and so we're probably going to go in with another request for a temporary restraining order on her new order. We'll probably be filing that very shortly, But we have a hearing set up for October 3rd on the preliminary injunction. So the way it works, for those who aren't familiar with legal terminology, the temporary restraining order is immediate. That's an immediate stay, but it only lasts for 14 days generally. So it's limited in duration until you can have a hearing on the preliminary injunction. If the preliminary injunction is granted, that lasts for the duration of the litigation. However long the lawsuit lasts, that stay on her order would be in place. The permanent injunction, of course, would be the final thing the ultimate thing that we're seeking, meaning that the judge rules at the end of the trial that that there needs to be in this injunction against her order, or her order is unconstitutional. The judge has already conceded that we're most likely to win that. And that's because that's one of the primary bases for determining whether a temporary restraining order should be granted is the plaintiff likely to succeed on the merits? And the judge said, yes, we are. We're likely to succeed because of the Supreme Court's holding in the Bruen decision last year, as well as, of course, because of the Second Amendment itself, which very clearly she's violated here. So the judge, this federal judge, who, again, lest you think that, the judiciary is all political, let me just correct that. This judge is a Biden appointee, okay? And he ruled in our favor because he recognized he has to respect the Constitution. He has to respect the decision of the United States Supreme Court. And whether he personally agrees with it or not, it doesn't matter. He has an obligation to uphold the law and enforce the law, and he did that. And so we're very grateful to him, Judge David Urias, who ruled in our favor. And this got a lot of national attention because even the Democrat Attorney General in the state of Mexico, who served in the Obama Department of Justice, came out against the governor and said what she was doing is unconstitutional. He wasn't going to defend her in court. He knew that We the Patriots USA and some other organizations had filed lawsuits against her. He said, I'm not going to court for you. My primary oath is to the Constitution, not to you. That's a secondary obligation to defend you in court. My primary obligation is to the Constitution. So God bless him. And then Sheriff John Allen, the sheriff of the county where she imposed this radical order, came out in a press conference and said he wasn't enforcing it because it's unconstitutional. Now, that did not moot it because there's still local law enforcement and state police that could have enforced it. Remember, the state police don't report to the sheriff. So the state police still could be enforcing this order. So we still had to go to court and get this injunction, this temporary restraining order, I should say, because it still could have been enforced, even if the sheriff said he wasn't going to enforce it. So that's our latest case. And we get a ton of press from that. I mean, I did 3 interviews in 1 week with Steve Bannon. I did Glenn Beck yesterday. I mean, it's been getting a lot. Charlie Kirk had me on. I've been getting a lot of press from this because this was so radical, this woman who thinks that she can defy the Supreme Court. I mean, it's basically a governor against the United States Supreme Court and against our Constitution. And so that's such a radical thing. It's like, this isn't just like, okay, we're going to put a limit on how much ammo you can purchase, which I don't agree with that either. But this was way more extreme, or it wasn't even what Connecticut recently did. And by the way, we have a lawsuit against the governor in the state of Connecticut, too, over their open carry ban. They recently just banned open carry back in June. They passed a new law to ban the open carry, and that's unconstitutional, too, we think. However, this went beyond that even. This didn't say open carry only is banned. This said all carry. I don't care if you have a permit or not. Nobody can carry a weapon in the city or in any state parks or any public parks, anything. Nobody can carry a weapon. All of a sudden, I'm just deciding that. No legislature, no public hearings, no law. I'm just by executive order going to say you can't carry in public. And so these kinds of tyrants, these kind of Marxist governors need to be stopped. And that's something we're getting heavily involved in. I know a question you had asked before we went live, Ricky, was, how has our focus changed at all and shifted since COVID? Well, yes, we're spending less time on vaccine mandate cases, obviously now, but we still have those working their way through the courts. But Second Amendment rights were always in our original charter, so to speak. If you look back on our website, which is still the things we have listed, the areas we cover is still the exact same list that we published the first day our website went live. And Second Amendment rights, the right to keep and bear arms, is listed right in there in our original mission statement. So this was always the vision to defend Second Amendment rights, to defend parental rights, education rights, to defend, environmental safety against things like 5G. And we have a lawsuit in East Palestine, Ohio, over the train derailment. I may have talked to you about that when we filed back in March. I don't know if we had an interview about that or not. I can't remember.
I did talk. I do remember doing some couple podcasts on the incident. I don't know if we specifically talked about it, but if you want to, just in case people missed that, or maybe people aren't too familiar with it, if you don't mind updating us on what's going on with that.
Yeah, sure. So, as everyone knows, in February there was a train derailment, Norfolk Southern in East Palestine, Ohio, and there was a chemical spill as a result of that, and because it was hazardous waste that was being carried, and so the government, the EPA, did what they call a controlled burn, where they burned it all off, and there was a huge plume of black smoke that went into the air. But they didn't really tell anyone what was going to be in that black smoke. Okay, that was probably the first misstep. They didn't evacuate anyone, which was also the second misstep, or equally as bad as not telling people what was going to be in it. They didn't try to evacuate anyone. They made it seem like it was perfectly safe to release these chemicals into the air. There's a whole laundry list of chemicals, dangerous chemicals, one of which was even used as a bioweapon in the First World War, that they released into the air. And they didn't evacuate anyone. They told everyone it was safe to breathe, safe to drink the water. Governor DeWine even toasted on the local news, or on network news, actually nationally, a cup of tap water, a glass of tap water, and drank it, and did this whole little, or pretended to drink it, I don't know, did this whole little charade, and told everyone it was perfectly safe. Now, meanwhile, we had people on the ground doing soil testing, doing air testing, doing water testing. Our own Kristen Megan Kelly, who an industrial hygienist, toxicologist. She has a podcast for us, Vets and Visionaries, with Kristen Megan. She is one of our experts, along with her colleague Tammy Clark and some other people we have on the ground. They visited it. They could tell even a month after it, when they visited it, their throats started burning as they came into the area. People were reporting all kinds of sickness. Their animals, their pets were even dying. Now, these are the same people, the same government officials that told us, Ricky, during COVID, we had to put a piece of cloth over our face, or a paper mask, because it was unsafe to breathe the air. Now, when there's a plume of toxic chemicals in the air, that's perfectly safe. You can have your babies out there. You can drink the water. You can breathe the air. You don't have to put any PPE on. Now, this was a situation that probably did require hazardous hazmat gear.
But they did the same thing in Iraq with the military and the burn pits, where they're just disposing of things by burning them, and then telling the military personnel that it was completely safe to be around it. And then a lot of people got sick. They did the same thing with September 11th, with telling all the first responders, don't worry about the air quality, you're fine. And then they went in and a bunch of them got sick. So, I mean, to me, it's just like it's kind of, I guess it's kind of what they do. They don't really care about human life. They don't care about, at least the average person's human life. They don't care about the average person at all. And it amazes me how many of these stories just continue to circulate, and yet it's still hard to convince people that the ones in power don't care about them. It's like they don't. Like, your life is not important, and it's hard for people to grasp that. And I think even during the COVID era, like, it was hard for people to think that big pharma, big government, the FDA, CDC, all these people would knowingly put out something that is going to endanger people. And it's for me, it's like, that's what they've always done. That's what they've never cared. And it's just been, I mean, we live in this weird North Korea like state where the government convinces you everything they do is for your protection, it's for your safety. But the truth is, it's not. It's just to control you, and it's for their agendas. And, that's why you have a lot more faith in in the the going to court and all this stuff. And I think that you have shown that you can be victorious, and it you can. But it almost seems like at the highest level, it's like, how far can you take it before, like, they're like, hey, you know what, we'll give you a little victory. But and that's always a concern of mine. And there's this guy, Jeff Younger. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He was on the Culture War podcast with Tim.
Yes.
And he was talking about how, like, because you were talking about, like, people who say, hey, you know what, I'm putting my personal opinions aside, but this is the Constitution, this is what it stands for, these type of things. But he made a really good point, and a point that I've kind of thought a lot of myself about, and that how like even laws themselves, it's like a lot of it's interpretation, right? Like our own values will dictate the way we think a law, what a law should represent, or who they're protecting or not protecting. And I think that goes back to like just understanding the values of like the founding fathers, and you have to almost go back to the roots and learn a little bit of history. And we live in a world today where people are just kind of like forgetting all that and just interpreting things the way they want to interpret, right? It's like the Second Amendment thing is hilarious because people are like, oh, it's about a militia, and what do you need a militia for? We live in a safe world. And, but, it's like you can't talk about it like, those times, because those times, it was a different world. And it's like, not really. Like, you're kind of just like convinced that, these things are now outdated when they're really not. And really we should be equally, if not more, concerned about government overreach and about tyranny and all these things. So, I think one thing I love about talking to you is that you really do focus a lot on like, okay, what is the origin of these things? What is the spirit? Because that's a term that's used a lot, right? Like the spirit of the law, or the spirit of, what was the motivation to have this, in the books and in writing. It's like, okay, that's what we need to hold on to, instead of like everybody's modern interpretation of things.
Right. Absolutely. The founding fathers were living under a tyrannical regime. All right. They knew, people like George III weren't any better, or the people now that we have running the government aren't any better than George III. Okay. In some ways, they may be worse. They certainly have more weapons at their disposal, everything from bioweapons, chemical weapons, weapons, weaponizing, technology, even the internet, things like that. I mean, there's just all kind. You're talking about DEWs. I don't know. I'm sure you've heard the theories about what happened on the ground in Hawaii. We've had a guest on, Shelby Thompson she's the founder of Unjected. She was on our podcast, Faithful Freedom, with Taryn Gregson. So go back and check out that episode at wethepatriotsusa.org. She also participated in our vaccine safety awareness marathon this year. But she talked about what she lives in Maui. So she talked about what she saw, and it's not what was being reported on the TV, on the mainstream news, on the internet. So, yeah, there are people that have an agenda and would purposely try to harm people. I mean, I talk to people of like my parents' generation, and they say, or even my parents, not to call them out. Oh, but that's horrible, to think that the government would do that. That's a horrible thing to think. I don't want to believe that our government would do this. But I say, hold on a second. I understand what you're saying, but think about history, even recent history. You don't have to go back that far. Look at history all around the world, even now. Well, this is the United States. We're different. Well, really? What did you just tell us about what happened to the soldiers in Iraq in 9/11? What did we know about what happened at Camp Lejeune? What do we know about the Tuskegee experiment? Okay. And all these times the government has lied to people and purposely harmed people. It's happened over and over and over and over again. And yet people believe that somehow now, just in the last like 10 years, 20 years or something, we've evolved, that we're all good people running the government, and they wouldn't do that to us. These people running the world wouldn't do that to us. It's just totally ludicrous. Of course they would. Human nature has always been evil since the fall of man. Okay. Go back to ancient history all the way up until now. We've always been evil. Okay. So the idea that, oh no, that we wouldn't do this because it's 2023 now, instead of like, 1233.
Maybe not. Maybe not always just been evil. There's always been evil and good, right? Like throughout history. And, man has always, I think the two have always existed.
Well, that's what I mean. There's always been evil people, though, in power.
Exactly.
I don't mean everyone's evil.
Yeah. I hope not.
That's not what I meant. I meant there's always been, well, everyone's a sinner, though. There's always some element of evil, but the people in power in particular have by and large been evil for most of history. or at least there's been many evil leaders. I'm not saying every single leader was evil. In fact, JFK, I think, was trying to defeat the globalist agenda, and that's why they killed him.
And do you think many of them, the majority, and I think you're right, I think a huge percentage of people who are in power typically are evil? Do you think that's because only somebody who probably has heinous intentions would even want that position in the first place? Like, who wants to control others? Or even like even modern day, you look at it, who I look at, like, who'd want to be a politician? Who'd want every skeleton in the closet to be exposed? And
well, I mean, the evil people you would think wouldn't want that, but they have enough connections to suppress that for the most part. But here's the thing, right? If you're meek and humble of heart, if you have a Christ-like meekness, you would not want that kind of position. In fact, I'm Catholic, and you read the stories of the lives of the saints. There's great saints. When some of them who were offered the papacy, the papal throne, and ran away from it because they didn't want it, or if they were finally elected and they had to take it, there's actually a room that the Pope goes into. This goes back to ancient times. After you're elected, it's called the crying room, because it's a room where if you're really meek and humble, you don't want this position. The last thing in the world you should want is to become the Pope, to the leader of the church of over 1 billion Catholics. You don't want that. And the same should hold true for world leaders. If you're truly someone that is humble and meek, you don't want that kind of power. You don't want that kind of responsibility. Anyone who's thirsty for it and is driven for it usually has ulterior motives. Now, there is the rare case, like I mentioned, JFK, who I believe was actually trying to upend the globalist agenda and was in there for the right reasons. And that's why he had the drive and ambition, is because he wanted to stop them. He saw what was going on in the world. He tapped into their agenda, and he was going to undo it all. He was going to totally dismantle the CIA, everything. And guess what? Once they found out that he was on to them, what happened to him? And what happened to his brother, who tried, to run for president? And now RFK Jr., did you hear somebody went after him the other day, tried to take him down?
yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Yeah, because there's been a lot of like just weird stories of late. Obviously, the Russell Brand stories making headlines, and then you look at which is insane. I mean, for people who don't know, RFK Jr. asked, put in, or how, I don't know how you go about it, but he asked President Biden and the administration for Secret Service, and apparently anybody who runs has the right to that, or maybe you have to. Is there a popularity limitation to it?
It's not across the board. It is discretionary. They don't have to give you Secret Service protection. If you're not even, it's not like the second you announce your candidacy, they have to give it to you. However, his point was, historically, they've always given it. They've always given it, and why aren't they giving it to me? Now, luckily, he has his own resources, and he has his own private bodyguards and private protection. And so they were able to take down this assailant who was attempting to harm him, who had multiple rounds, mags on him, and multiple firearms on him, and was supposedly intent on taking him out. I just heard this. I don't know all the details of the story. I heard it over the weekend, but apparently they're trying to take him out too, which doesn't surprise me. Anyone, again, who is truly trying to stop the globalist agenda, they are going to try to take that person out. They're not going to just let them take power and dismantle it all.
Well, and if there's anybody who deserves a Secret Service detail, it's the guy who had his uncle assassinated and the guy who had
his father
assassinated. And both of them are, I mean, I've had James DiEugenio on to cover both stories, and he knows both stories very well. And anybody who's done real research knows that without a doubt. I mean, you can't deny that there's definitely, for lack of better term, some fuckery going on with both of them. And I mean, Sirhan doesn't even remember the shooting. Sound recognition technology picked up more gunshots than Sirhan had bullets in his gun. I mean, there's just, you go on and on and on with all the weird things that happened, and then look at who they pissed off, right? And then it's same thing with Russell Brand, right? He pissed off the right people, and it amazes me that people don't see the trend that only when you run for president and you're in the public eye do all these, all of a sudden all these women come out about Trump, all these women come out about Russell Brand, Joe Rogan, when he was getting a lot of publicity, and people, I think politicians realized the political weapon he really could be based on who he liked or didn't like. All of a sudden, his close friends like Brian Callen and other comedians had all these accusations come out, and then once the election's over, all those accusations just disappear. All of a sudden, those women just disappear. It's like and that's the scary part, is that it doesn't have to be true, and nothing even has to come from it. You just have to plant the seed. You just have to just spread a rumor, and you can ruin somebody or at least hurt them in some sense, just by spreading the rumor. And when the CIA and politicians and everybody has friends and buddies in the media, and they have links to big tech, and I mean they can trend any story they want, and they can suppress any story they want, which you saw with the Hunter Biden stories and all this stuff, while they had no problem regurgitating Russiagate, even though there was no real evidence there. So it's like, it's scary that that's all they need to do, and it just is say something. And I've heard the theory that some people believe that maybe it's not because they're going to try to assassinate Robert Kennedy Jr., but it's a lot of it is because he has to pay out of pocket now for all that security, which can obviously cost him a lot of money and hurt his campaigning. So that's a huge issue. As somebody who, much like myself, have spent a lot of time critiquing and not being happy with anybody who considers themselves a Democrat or on the left. How do you feel about him running as a Democrat? Do you kind of see his perspective on why he wanted to run as a Democrat? Because obviously his family historically have represented that party, and maybe he just wants to redefine what a Democrat is. Or what's your opinion on it?
Well, you're going to force me into my disclaimer that We the Patriots USA is a non-partisan, apolitical organization. We don't endorse or oppose any candidate. So I'm speaking purely on behalf of myself, Brian Festa, and not on behalf of the organization. But anyway, I think it was incredibly genius what he did in running for president, because even if he has no shot of getting elected, and there's a lot of people that don't think he does, but even if he doesn't, it was extremely valuable, because he's the only one that could actually run for president and actually who's on our side with things like vaccines, and actually get public attention and get it into the public debate and be on major networks, because he's a major political candidate. None of us have the Kennedy name. No one else in this fight could actually, legitimately run for president and have an actual, seat on the debate stage. And get it into the public debate. So it was a genius thing for the medical freedom movement alone, even if he never gets elected. And so that's why when I heard that he was running, I said, wow, that's really smart. I couldn't do that because I don't have the ability. I don't have the name. I don't want to anyway. But even if I wanted to, I couldn't do it because I wouldn't have that kind of name recognition to get this debate about medical freedom, about vaccines into the public sphere. And now you have even people on CNN, MSNBC talking about the vaccine debate, whereas before they would just shut it down. But because he's a major political candidate, they have to. So as far as him running as a Democrat, I mean, he had to. That's his family history. He's the most famous Democrat, probably the most famous political family. Maybe you could say the Bushes, but really the Kennedys, I think, would be number one in American history. The most as far as a political dynasty, and just the everything surrounding the Kennedys. And there's just been so much, not only as in the presidency, but in the Senate and Congress. I mean, there's just that name is just ubiquitous in American politics. So, and it's always been Democrat, right? So you have to run as a Democrat if you're a Kennedy. Now, he hasn't ruled out running as a third party candidate. And I think he sort of hinted at that. It's possible he could. Again, I'm not, announcing any kind of endorsement. I can't do that. I'm not going to discuss, privately what I'm going to do as far as voting. But I do think, at least for getting the discussion started, it was worth it just for that. because so many people who never would allow this conversation on air are allowing it because they sort of have to give him some airtime, especially when they saw his polling numbers. It's not like he only had like 1 or 2%. I mean, at one point, I don't know what they are now. At one point, he was like at 14% or something, which is ridiculous against an incumbent Democrat to come out that high. I think that was when he first, shortly after he announced he was, and he might even be higher now. I mean, he's actually given Biden to run for his money. He's actually the only challenger who has. And honestly, if you're gonna challenge an incumbent, come on, you have have an incumbent in there who anyone could challenge. You could put a dog up there to challenge him, and it would you'd get a 20%, 14% approval rate. I mean, nothing. No offense to Bobby there, but I mean, at this point, I mean, his own party even realizes there's no way you can keep this charade going. The guy can't string two sentences together. So it's like if there was any year to challenge an incumbent, I mean, Bobby realized this is the year to do it. So again, no offense. I mean, I think he's doing better than a dog would do. But I'm just saying, like, it's this is the guy to challenge if you were ever going to challenge someone, right?
Yeah, without a doubt. And I mean, you after your 24-hour marathon sound way better than Biden after a full night's sleep. It's it's crazy. And and the thing is too, it's like it's so obvious that we have a problem when politics, big tech, and people are sabotaging elections. This idea that like, oh, like just saying, it's become taboo to say that like a election could be manipulated or stolen. It's like, have you ever watched that what was that HBO movie? Oh my God, Hacking Democracy, right? Like that was pretty obvious that there was easily that you could easily manipulate these machines, and now people are like, oh no, that's insane. It's like, dude, since the beginning of elections there's been elections fuckery. Now you can argue how much of it there is, or how much of it was there enough to change the outcome? That's a different conversation. But the people who are so blinded to say that, like, oh, there's elections are, it's like, did you wonder why they were scaring the crap out of everybody during the election to stay at home and vote via mail? Like that was a part of the plan. Like,
oh yeah, Russians could interfere. Okay, in 2016, Russians could interfere. They believe that, but they don't believe people within our own country who have immediate access, the people at the polling stations, the people handling the machines, they don't believe they could possibly do anything nefarious. Only people thousands of miles away overseas could have hacked in, but nobody who's standing right there could possibly do anything to interfere with the election. Right, Ricky?
Yeah, it's weird because we talk about like American values and like the origin story of America and what it stood for. And it seems like the biggest threat to that is America. Like it seems like we're killing ourselves from the inside out, right? Like it's Western ideology, Western philosophies where they're going around trying to kill culture, they're trying to kill community, they're trying to kill I was talking to I was listening to some podcasts recently, and they were talking about churches and how like they have their own like communities, and it's like almost like its own world because they have their own way that they justify things and the way they get funds and they put together events, and it's like living on your own little parallel planet. And we're actually doing a Union of the Unwanted on parallel systems coming up next week. And I was thinking about it, like churches is kind of like a example of a parallel system. Like this is what a world could be like without government, like, or with less government. Like, there's a lot of libertarians, friends of mine, anarcho-libertarians that I grew up listening to that would talk about how how, and I say you as in like the general public thinks that like you need government because without government there'd be chaos. And the truth is like that's not true. And maybe maybe there's a gray area, maybe it's not true or untrue, it's somewhere in the middle, but we definitely don't need as much of a big brother looking after us as we're told. And
No.
there was a study, I forget where they like removed like street lights or like stop signs or whatever, and like the accidents minimized because people were now like, okay, there's no sign here. Somebody could be running this intersection, so now I got to slow down and look every time, right? Instead of so this idea that like there'd be same thing with churches, right? A lot of libertarians and people talk about use churches as a example of like, okay, well, if instead of the government taking your money and then using it wherever they want to use it, like sending billions of dollars to Ukraine while people in Hawaii are suffering, you let people would still help each other if you just weren't raping them of their income, and they would still gather and say, hey, let's gather gather some funds to help these people of need or whatever, and there's examples of that everywhere. So this idea that like we need the government to do it is just insane. So you're going to add to some of the things I was highlighting.
Well, I mean, I definitely think that less government is better. I do think there needs to be some structure of government in place, or at least some basic laws, because obviously, now what else would you expect a lawyer to say, right? It'd put me out of business if there weren't laws, right? However, they don't need to be as many as there are. I certainly agree with that. The amount of regulation is way overstretched, but we do need some basic laws, because when you don't have laws or you don't have people to enforce the law, look what happens in cities like Portland and San Francisco, where they just let people use as many drugs as they want, riot, loot, burn buildings. No police were arresting them, and they just destroyed the city. And they just took over the city, defecating in the street, using. I mean, you look at that city, and that city. They used to call the Rose City. All right, it used to be a beautiful place to live. Is just completely destroyed because of lawlessness, and it's not only from the people, residents of Portland. You look at many of these cities, like Albuquerque, where we filed our temporary restraining order. All these illegals pouring over the border that no one's enforcing what are supposed to be our immigration laws, and nobody's enforcing the border. When you don't enforce things, people just run roughshod over the country and destroy it. So there does have to be some degree of law enforcement. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, well, I'm curious, like, so if we lived in a world where there wasn't any laws whatsoever, because I think like the problem is like sometimes the laws are defending the wrong people, or they're using the laws to defend the wrong people. Because you look at like in Oregon, like why is it okay to burn down these, these buildings, the police station? Like if there was street justice, right? They wouldn't be able to do that, because what would happen is somebody would be like, hey, you're burning down our community. We're going to rebel. We're going to do something about it. But what ends up happening is that if you harm one of these people who are doing harm, you end up getting locked up, right? I mean, so in other words, like justice is selective, and you can use it for whatever you want. I mean, look at the January 6th thing, right? Like it's absolutely insane that there's people locked up because of that, who just walked in the building, and yet, these fires that were happening all over the place, nobody was getting locked up, and they were called peaceful protests, right?
Right. But to bring it full circle back to the evil that rests within mankind's nature, okay, or at least within a subset of mankind, you have those vigilantes you talk about in the street, who in your hypothetical would just shut down street justice, shut down the thugs, right? Eventually they would emerge one or a group of people within that street justice league, that justice league, right, who would actually become corrupt and use their power as the defenders of the people to take advantage of people. They'd be robbing people, they'd be raping, they'd be pillaging. There would be eventually some evil person would emerge who would be the ringleader, who would then be perpetrating evil because they're the person with all the power. So absolute power corrupts absolutely. You've heard that many times. Think of Lord of the Flies. You're familiar with that. William Golding's most famous novel, right? Lord of the Flies. And what happened to that group of children even? And obviously that was a fictional. Now, that didn't really happen, but it would happen. He imagined what probably would happen if you leave a group of boys alone on an island, what would happen? There'd eventually be this power dynamic. Somebody would emerge as the leader. There's always a leader, and that leader would most likely be corrupt and have a thirst for blood. And that's, I think he's absolutely right. That's exactly what would happen, even if you left children alone long enough. There would eventually be someone, well, children get older, and there's eventually a fallen human nature that would emerge. Someone would be evil. I'm not saying every single one would be evil, but someone would emerge as the evil one who would probably be the one in power. So you just have a microcosm of what's happened in our own government. So I don't think by dismantling the government, you would take away human nature and you wouldn't have these problems anymore. You'd just have them not so structured anymore. So you'd have all these mini governments all over the place with their own street justice, their own vigilante groups all over the place. You'd have all these pockets rather than one national, dictator system. Rather than having one national dictator, one federal government that can oppress everyone, you'd have all these little groups oppressing the people living under them. So that's personally what I think. Now, there's people that are anthropologists probably that might disagree with me. They know more about, they've studied human history and human nature probably way more than I have. Maybe they disagree. I bet some agree with me, though. I bet there's a whole bunch of people that agree with me. William Golding agreed with me. Not that he's, an expert on everything, but he was I said, he wrote this famous novel. And so the reason it was famous because it struck a chord with a lot of people that read it. They're like, wow, that's a dark side of human nature that even, and he used children as his example, that even children would resort to killing each other. And he's probably right, is the horrible thing. He's probably right. Left alone for survival long enough, even young people would probably resort to this. So it's a horrible thought, and it's actually a very frightening novel. But it's not a kid's book by any means. They should not be, no, fifth grader should be reading that. That's definitely a high school or up novel, and that's usually where it's read. That is not a little kid's book. But anyway, I used to be an English teacher. I used to teach high school English. You might remember that. We talked about that maybe a long time ago. But so when you start bringing up fiction, then you start getting me into my teacher lecturer mode. So
no, but it's fun to ponder on these things, because these are interesting and fun conversations. Because the truth is, I think when we live in such a safe environment, we have a hard time thinking about the world or what people are capable of if they were forced to do something out of the norm. And you saw it. I mean, you kind of saw it during COVID, right? Like the people who during COVID, I'm like, okay, I know the people who have strong moral values, who think for themselves, the ones who aren't afraid to go against the grain if they believe that they're doing the right thing. And then I know the ones who just do whatever the authority tells them to do. And, if I was a Jew hiding in Germany, I know plenty of neighbors that would have ratted me out, because the government told them that, hey, they're the other, and you need to turn them all in. Because I saw it with like people just having get-togethers for holidays, like people calling the police saying, hey, there's too many people gathering at this house, and you started treating these others as the other, like you started treating your neighbor, people part of your community, people that you enjoyed and liked and didn't see anything wrong with them previously, but now because of the media and the fear mongering created by political propaganda and whatnot, now all of a sudden they're the other, they're demons, they're the enemy. And that's the truth. And it's funny because there's even close friends, I wouldn't say close, but friends of ours who I remember telling my wife, I'm like, I know you guys are all on good terms now, and you guys are all friendly, and everything's good because there's no tension in the air, and everybody isn't arguing about these issues. But I'm like, don't forget how their character came to light and came to the surface when shit hit the fan. And that friend that you call a friend, when shit hits the fan, they will turn on you again. And so I'm like, just don't. And for me, I forgive, I don't forget. And, to me, like, it was a reflection of a lot of people's character. And it showed me like the people who I would go to battle with, and the people who would have my back, and the people who would really stand up for something. And then the ones who just do it when it's really easy to do so, when it's difficult to do so. That's why, I have so much respect for people like yourself, people like Robert Kennedy Jr. When he was on the Rogan podcast, and I talked about this with Dr. Brian Hooker recently, he was back on to talk about his new book. And I'm just like, the people like us, right, who basically for the longest time, I felt like a innocent person who's trying to convince the world, who's convinced that I'm guilty, that I'm innocent. I'm on like death row, and I'm like, no, I swear to God, I did not do it. I didn't do it. And everybody's looking at you like you're crazy. And you're just like, oh my God. Like it's just like it's one of the scariest feelings ever when you feel like you live in this parallel universe where everybody's convinced of something, you can't convince them otherwise. That's how the vaccine topic was for a long time, where I'm just like, how do you not see this? Like, what do you like? The same way that the people who make the bombs are going to convince you that we need more wars, the people who make the vaccines are going to convince you we need more vaccines, and they don't care who they harm. Like, literally the same concept. It's the same thing. And then when Robert Kennedy Jr. went on the biggest podcast on the planet and laid out the whole history of it all, like, I'm just like I got emotional listening to that podcast, because I never thought the day was going to come. And I know Eddie Bravo. I'm friends with Sam Tripoli. I know a lot of people close to them, and I know a lot of people have been they've all contributed to helping motivate Rogan to kind of see things from from our perspective, because obviously he's had people like Dr. Hotez and other people from the other perspective. And but when the day finally came, it was just like, oh my God, like, this is like, we've done it. Everybody like you and I and Dell and everybody who has just been saying this and fighting back and trying to get through to people, we finally have created a ripple large enough that Robert Kennedy Jr. is now on Rogan, and it's become a mainstream acceptable conversation. And being skeptical of big pharma and their product, their vaccine product, is now not the equivalent to reptilians or aliens or anything. It's like, it's finally talked about and discussed like a serious topic, and it's just like, it was crazy.
Well, that was due in part, of course, to what happened with the COVID shots, but also in part because he ran for president. Like I said, that Rogan didn't have him on until he announced he was running for president. Okay, so I think that's why I think it was a brilliant move. I want to respond to something you said there, though, if I may. And I'm going to give a shout out. I don't know your wife. I've never met her, I don't think. But I'm going to give a shout out to her. She's an amazingly wise and bright woman, because she said to you, don't forget their character and what they did, right? During COVID. All of your friends around you.
No,
everything's fine.
I said that to her.
Oh, you said that to her. Okay. Well, I'm sure she's bright and wise anyway. But you are wise for saying that. That was a very wise thing you said, Ricky. There's an episode of The Twilight Zone, one of my favorite old shows, and it's called The Shelter. You remember that one? Where there was a bomb shelter? Go back and watch it. You can get it on YouTube. I don't want to support them, but you can find it on YouTube. And I just looked it up just to make sure it is available there. Episode 68, actually. It's called The Shelter. And he's having a birthday party. They're in like a suburb of New York City. And there's a guy having a birthday party with his friends. He has his neighbors over. And all of a sudden there's an alert that there's going to be a nuclear bomb hitting. You know how this is the Cold War times. This is the 1950s, early 60s, late 1950s. So all of a sudden everybody's in a panic. Now, this guy for years has been working on a bomb shelter. He's got one. And he says, I told all of you, while you were having your cookouts, your barbecues, your parties, I told you, spend just a couple of hours each weekend, work on this. None of you listened to me. And of course, now they all want into a shelter, but he only has enough food and air and everything for his own family. And they end up actually breaking down the door. And it's a horrible moment. They're going to like kill each other. And then finally an alert comes. I'm giving away the whole episode, but you should watch it, that it really wasn't going to happen, that there really isn't going to be an attack. And they look at each other and say, okay, well, can't we just go back to how we were before? And no, even though only like a couple of hours have passed. so much has changed between them because their true natures were revealed. I mean, just Rod Serling was just so brilliant. But, he doesn't get enough credit for his work, I think, sometimes in the Twilight Zone. But again, like I was mentioning William Golding earlier, these insights into human nature, it was just, you saw there was a change there. There was a shift, even though it was such a short amount of time, even way shorter than 2 or 3 years in COVID. And all right, all of a sudden, these people you thought your best friends and your neighbors, you can't trust. No one can trust anyone, and they'll never be the same now, just because of that one incident of 2 hours. They'll never be the same. So it's just we're living in a Twilight Zone, in a real life Twilight Zone. That's what it is. I mean, these last 3 years have been like a Twilight Zone episode. They really have been, and we're still doing work though. We're still fighting in the courts, Ricky. We still have litigation ongoing over mandates, over vaccine exemptions, particularly in Connecticut, close by to you. Everybody knows I'm in Idaho now, but most people know I was originally in Connecticut and I'm a New Englander at heart and by birth, and always will be a New Englander. Okay, but I will tell you that we have multiple lawsuits in Connecticut, and one of them is the religious exemption lawsuit, because the Connecticut legislature repealed the religious exemption in 2021. April of 2021, you were involved in that fight. You helped us. You supported us through the years we were fighting that, Ricky. And then, unfortunately, they took it away. They repealed the religious exemption in April of 2021. Within 2 days of the repeal, we filed a federal lawsuit. And that lawsuit is now being petitioned, is about to be petitioned to the United States Supreme Court. Because, of course, the Second Circuit didn't rule in our favor. We expected that. But now we are just a hair's breadth away from having this case at the United States Supreme Court. We think we have a really good shot at having them review it. I can't speak for the justices. It's up to them whether they take it. It's not up to Brian Festa. But we only need 4 justices to agree to review it. We don't need a majority of the court. We just need 4 of them. And actually, we had a very similar case against Kathy Hochul, the state of New York, and the Public Health Commissioner of New York, over the New York healthcare worker mandate in 2021, which we filed on an emergency motion to the Supreme Court. And we actually got Justice Thomas, Alito, and Gorsuch agreed. They would have taken that appeal, our emergency appeal. But we couldn't get any of the other justices that we would have hoped, Kavanaugh, Coney Barrett, or Roberts, to take it up. We needed one more vote. And I think it was hinted there in that decision that, it was because it came up on an emergency motion. They're sometimes less likely, I think, to review cases that come up on an emergency motion when they haven't been, fully adjudicated in the courts below. But now we have a case of very similar issues presented about religious liberty when it comes to vaccination, but it has had a chance to be fully argued and briefed at those lower levels. It's not coming up as emergency, and more time has passed and more has been revealed about these shot mandates and how they really, all of this goes against, if not the Constitution, public policy. So they have to, we believe very strongly it violates the U.S. Constitution, and other laws. But more time has passed now. We are hopeful that with this petition it's called the cert petition that we're about to file to the United States Supreme Court, that this case will be taken up by them. And if it is, this will be monumental. This will be the biggest case in the history of medical freedom, because if they rule in our favor, religious exemptions will be preserved in every public school in the United States, even in places where exemptions have been lost years ago, like California, New York, Maine. Exemptions will be restored in all or preserved in all 50 states. So this is the lawsuit that has the potential to win it all for everyone. So we encourage people to support us. We, the Patriots, USA.org. The initial lawsuit was fully funded by our donors. We haven't been raising money for it for years, but there are, of course, additional costs when you go to the Supreme Court, even just for printing. People don't realize this. You need to provide a printed copy of your brief to every single person involved, all of the law clerks, all of the justices, all of the attorneys on the other side, even people who file amicus briefs. You need to file. We had that one case we were involved in. We went to the Supreme Court. We had to pay $10,000 in printing costs alone, just to have things printed. Okay. So there's additional costs that we haven't borne yet, that haven't been, spent yet, because that money that was initially raised was already spent on legal fees. But We will need, obviously, additional support as this goes to the Supreme Court. So we do encourage you, if you support medical freedom, and if Ricky, if you could share that with any groups that are supportive of medical freedom and let them know about the lawsuit if they don't know, and encourage them to donate, we'd greatly appreciate it. Again, it's wethepatriotsusa.org. There's donate buttons all over the page. Obviously, because we survive on public funding. We're a public interest law firm, so we offer all of our services pro bono. When we take a plaintiff, we don't charge them a dime. So the only way we can do that is, I mean, somebody's going to pay the bill. The clients don't pay it. The donors have to pay it. So because otherwise this business model doesn't work very well if we don't have somebody paying money somehow. So we rely on support of our generous donors. So again, if you support that lawsuit, I think, it's going to be the most important, again, lawsuit that has ever been filed in defense of medical freedom. And again, if we get that win at the Supreme Court, it'll end the religious exemption battle once and for all, because every state will have to honor them, regardless of what laws they try to pass. They'll have to honor them.
Yeah, so I was actually just recently talking to somebody from Connecticut, and she was telling me that her neither her kids are vaccinated. I guess you can be grandfathered in with the religious exemption. So if you've already been religiously exempt, then you're okay. But if she has a young daughter that's going into the school system, and she's like panicking because she's like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. And so anybody
Well, you can put her in touch with me, first of all.
Yeah, I'll definitely
seriously, I'd be happy to talk to her. You can email me. She can email me directly at brian@wethepatriotsusa.org. It's BRIAN at wethepatriotsusa.org. I don't mind giving out my email address. But yeah, have her get in touch. But yeah, there were people grandfathered as of 11:59 p.m. on April 27th, because the law went into effect April 28th of 2021. So as of, the stroke of midnight of April 28th or 11:59 on April 27th, if you had a religious exemption already on file for K through 12 students, you were allowed, and college students who are already enrolled in college. There's some debate as to whether or not college students who had one in high school, that follows them to college. It depends on the college. Different colleges are interpreting that differently. It's not clear in the law. It just says if you had an exemption on file. Now, most lawyers would interpret that on file with the college, just like for K through 12, you have to have been enrolled in a K through 12 school and had it there. For college, most lawyers will say you had to have been enrolled in that college as of that day, April 27, 2021, in order to be grandfathered in. But there are a group of people, a strong contingent of people, who have argued in Connecticut that no, anyone who had a religious exemption, even through K through 12, it follows them into college. Some colleges have honored that, many have not. So that ultimately will be left to judicial interpretation. I can't interpret the law. That's not, I can't interpret it as a lawyer, but my say is not final. The judge's say is final, not Brian's. And not any of the other advocates or activists in Connecticut who have said one thing or another on that issue. Their word is not final. It has to go to a court, and a judge needs to rule on it in order for it to be final. So that's not a fight we're currently involved in, specifically with any college. However, our religious exemption battle, our plaintiffs are K through 12 students who were denied because they were not grandfathered in. They were trying to enter into kindergarten. And couldn't, because the law had already been passed and they weren't enrolled yet, and they were denied access to education under the Connecticut Constitution. Under Article 8 of the Connecticut Constitution, education is a fundamental right. And because they grandfathered in some 8,500 students, that shows that they did not have a compelling interest to abrogate that federal right. That Connecticut constitutional right, but also the federal right, constitutional right to religious freedom, because that's in First Amendment, as you know, of the United States Constitution. So it's both a federal constitutional right and a state constitutional right in play here. And anytime there's a fundamental right in play, you have to show that there's a compelling government interest and that you did it by the least restrictive means. The only exception is if it's a neutral law of general applicability, which means it's not specifically targeting any religious groups, it's purely neutral. But this is not neutral. And see, the Second Circuit said that it was. We disagree with that. it's not neutral. That's under a case called Employment Division versus Smith, which we think needs to be overturned, if not greatly narrowed. And we argue this in our cert petitions. It'd be very fascinating to read it when it's filed. I'll share it with everyone so they can read it. But that's a case that sort of defined the scope of religious exemptions under federal law, under the Constitution, the First Amendment. But this is not a neutral law of general applicability, because you clearly had people who with religious beliefs that were opposed to vaccination were being targeted, as opposed to anyone else from other religions that didn't have that belief. So it's not specific to the religion, it's specific to the belief. Okay, that's what has to be defined, we think, by the United States Supreme Court. It's specific to the belief system, and the belief system in common was anyone who opposed these vaccinations. They were discriminated against. They were not afforded equal protection under the law either, under the 14th Amendment, whereas everyone else who has religious beliefs that don't oppose, those religions were respected. So certain religions were discriminated against, others were not. If that's not equal protection, last time I checked. So only certain religious beliefs are acceptable now, according to the state. The state gets to define which religious beliefs can be respected. No. So clearly, we have a strong contingent of people in Connecticut and in every state that oppose vaccinations on religious grounds, and their religious beliefs need to be respected, especially because there's no compelling interest. There was no emergency. If you grandfathered in 8,500 K through 12 students, how can you look at me with a straight face and say there was a public health emergency and you needed to pass this? If there was a public health emergency, you wouldn't have let them stay in school. If there was a public health emergency, why didn't you do anything to address all the other places children gather? Children gather at playgrounds, parks, restaurants, movie theaters, those trampoline parks, jump places. I mean, everywhere I bring my kids, right? And you bring your kids too, right? There's tons of places where kids are playing together and wrestling together and making contact and stuff. And you don't know their vaccination status. You're not stopping the spread there. So just because you're assuming all these kids go to school, well, guess what? A lot of kids don't go to school. There's plenty of homeschooled kids. And you should, not that I want anybody to, I don't want to bring that up. I don't want to make them targets, although the state's already working on that, folks. They already are going after homeschoolers next. You know, that's on their radar. I don't think you're keeping any secret from them. They don't know all these kids are being homeschooled now or in private educational associations. You're on their radar already. So anyway, but there's all these other places, churches where kids gather, Sunday schools. I mean, you're not doing anything to address those, and we don't want you to, because we have a right to have our religious freedom. But my point is, it shows they're liars. But they didn't have any compelling government interest. There was no public health emergency. We didn't have outbreaks. At least you had like fake news, Disneyland outbreak and the Rockland County, New York outbreak of measles. You know, remember Disneyland in 2015? Senator Richard Pan in California used that as his excuse. That was fake, by the way. That wasn't from people using religious exemptions. All right. But these fake measles outbreaks, at least they had something that they could concoct to use as a basis for a compelling government interest. There was no such outbreak in Connecticut. So Connecticut, that's why this case is the best case to win this for us, because the facts, we have facts on our side. Not only do we have the law, we have the facts on our side. Those other states had these fake public health emergencies, but we didn't even have that.
Yeah, it drives me nuts that they don't want to respect your faith, but they want you to have faith in Big Pharma. And it's like, so you want me to believe that their product is safe and effective and there's no messing around with the studies, even though this is basically, once it gets put on the schedule, it's like printing money. But ignore all that, you know. And then, like you said, like, show me the examples of the places where they have the most religious exempted children and that causes a health issue. It doesn't. There's no examples of that. You know, there's no examples, like you said, of other places that kids gather that you don't know they're you know, like, because homeschooled kids who are, you know, who are well, homeschool kids and religious exempted kids, they gather a lot of different places. And, you know, there's no evidence that this is an issue. It's almost like during the COVID lockdowns. I remember when they had the Super Bowl and all these people gathered, and this was like the first big event where people gathered during you know, after the lockdowns. And I'm just, you know, I remember telling everybody, I'm like, how is everybody ignoring that supposedly there's a virus that is so dangerous it's going to kill whatever percentage of the population, all this stuff, And yet all these people gathered for Super Bowl and the hospitals didn't fill up. So like how can that many people gather all around each other while cheering and screaming and yelling and touching each other and walking by each other and squeezing by each
They
other?
didn't all have masks on.
And they didn't all have masks on. And even if they did, I mean, it wouldn't matter anyways. There's plenty
It
of
doesn't work anyway. But even if by their fake science,
yeah.
they weren't wearing them anyway. So it's like they were all around a super spreader event. Remember they used to call those super spreader events? But like you said, where were all the people dying? Where were all the people hospitalized?
But
I didn't see it.
isn't those type of things why I personally have such little faith sometimes in humanity? Because I'm like, logically, it makes zero sense that you can't gather for the holidays, with a handful of people, but you can have a Super Bowl with how many thousands of people all gathered, and they're trying to convince you that your local hospital is going to fill up.
It was never about public health. That's why, Ricky, it was always about a virtue signal, a political symbol that people would wear this mask and, oh, you're one of us, or have their sticker, like the I voted sticker. I got my COVID shot sticker. Remember all those? And everybody would put it as their Facebook profile too. And then we started, people like us started making, mock ones of those, make fun of people. But, it just, because it wasn't even making fun of the people, it's fun of the idea. It was so illogical, like you said. And yet, people went along with it, but I think deep down inside, I don't think people are that dumb. Maybe I have a little more faith in humanity. Deep down inside, I think most of the people knew that it was BS. But again, because they were on, everyone was on their political side, that it gave them comfort to believe in this stuff and to show this and to wear these kind of symbols. Let me tell you, and I know we got to wrap up in a minute, but I just want to say something very important. People are talking about these lockdowns and mandates and stuff coming back possibly because of a new strain or whatever it is, Marburg, new strain of COVID, whatever it is. And there's all this chatter online about it. And some people say, oh, that's fake. That's not actually going to happen. They're just doing it as a psyop. And some people say it will happen. But I do think there's a good chance it'll happen at some point. I don't know about October. But at some point, I do think there's a really good chance it'll happen. And the reason is the people in power, the people on the left, on the political left, never had it so good during COVID. They had all the power, Ricky. Think about it. They had all of the power and they had everyone doing their bidding. So people who were on that side of the political aisle, the people who were, these leftist pro-vaxxers, believe in science, Peter Hotez types, they never had it so good because they not only had the federal government and state government on their side, they not only had the mainstream media on their side, they had every employer on their side. They had every grocery store manager, every grocery store clerk. They had every restaurant hostess and waitress on their side. They had every receptionist at every doctor's office on their side. Imagine the kind of power where you have everybody that agrees with you, and it was okay, according to them, to discriminate against anyone that disagrees with you. They lived in a world where it was legal for their side, for their political position to be the controlling position, and it's legal for us to discriminate against a segment of the population that doesn't agree with us and to shame them. And that was applauded. These people never had it so good. The worst thing that ever happened to them was the day the emergency was declared over by Biden and the day the mask mandates went away. That was one of the saddest days of their lives. These people want this back with a vengeance. There are some people trying to bring it back themselves. I see them walking outside, even in the great state of Idaho. I'll go to the grocery store and see a few people wearing masks. I'm sure out in Massachusetts and Connecticut, you see a lot more. They're putting them back on. They're double masking. They're masking in their car again. Come on, people, let's bring this back. Like they're a crowd at a football game trying to rally everyone. Or well, I'll use your favorite European football, right? Or a basketball game, right? I'll use that as an example. Trying to rally everyone around you, or a concert. You're trying to get everyone into it. That's what they're doing here. They're masking up again. They're starting this chatter online. Okay, we get this new strain. People are dying. We need to do this again. They're trying to get it going again because they never had it so good during COVID.
Unfortunately, I think you're right. I think if you're going to try to get the person elected that you want elected, then the fear mongering, the force, having more mail-in ballots because you're scaring everybody in the public to go physically vote, would work in their favor. I think during crises, obviously after September 11th, the Bush administration, their popularity went up. I think anytime there's a crisis, a lot of people turn to the government to protect them and save them. So it helps with their popularity. So I think there's a lot of reasons to believe that might be the case. It is a little bit scary because, like you said, we live in a world where a lot of people, they were just motivated by their political ideologies or personal ideologies, and I think this is one of the reasons why I think it happened and so many people fell for it is because think about the people who were the easiest brainwashed. Sometimes the immigrant in me comes out. I struggle with the basic English words, but the you know they lack a lot of the people who were tricked and got tricked into this were people who lack community, right? And you look at religious people, many people who are comfortable with who they are and have close friends and family and still find friends and family community as important aspects to their well-being and their lives. Like those people have community. And then you have the people who are like the binary, don't know who they are, have no identity, have no community, just kind of a lost soul. Well, now you gave them community because it's like now you're in the community of the vaccinated, you're in the community of the masks, you're the anti-Trump community, and I feel like that helped a little bit. Some of the most passionate people on that side seem to be people who were lost souls, who kind of like the type of people who'd be tricked into a cult, right? It's like you're a lost soul, you ran away from home, and it wasn't the cult's ideology that convinced you to join. It was the fact that now you feel like you have a family or a community, and you have people that are treating you like family because you didn't have family. And I think that's a huge issue in what's going on in the world today is the removal of culture, the removal of family, the removal of community. Because when you remove all those things and we don't depend on our neighbors and we don't depend on our communities and friends and family for help and support, then who do we depend on? The government, right? Damn it, I wish I was ending the show on a much more positive discussion.
Right. No, I get it. It's unfortunate. It's the world we live in. It's the reality, but all we can do is do what we're doing. Man, we got to continue to fight against this. We got to continue to band together, continue to support organizations like ours and others that are doing great work. Again, We the Patriots, I'll just give a final shout out for anyone who wants to support us. We the Patriots, USA.org. Not only financially, please reach out and sign up for our email list because we have updates on all these lawsuits and we want you to stay informed. And it's very hard to do it on social media because, as you know, we are still living under a technocratic state that censors us by and large. I mean, yes, it's better on Twitter these days, but it's still not perfect, and it's still horrible on Facebook and other places. So, please do sign up for our email list. Follow us on those platforms if you can find us, Twitter and Telegram, We the Patriots USA. And then on Twitter and Facebook, but also on Telegram, we're on Gab, Getter, Truth Social. We're on Minds. It's a great new platform. I just spoke with the CEO this morning. Actually, he's based out of Connecticut. Actually, the Minds.com CEO.
Rogan Pod. I'm actually on my show's on Minds. I'm not on Minds. I
Have Bill on your show. Have Bill Ottman on your show. He's the CEO of Minds, and he'd be great to have on your show and talk about the platform he's building. And he's got some really big people that he's joined forces with that are promoting it. I definitely think they're really taking off. Their platform, what I love about it is it's user-friendly. Almost, it's the closest I've seen to a platform like Facebook, but yet on our side, people that actually want to speak truth, the uncensored truth, and you can really grow there. And I think they have something like 6 million users already on that platform. So they're actually getting engagement as opposed to some of the other ones, unfortunately, have kind of popped up and fizzled out. But if you actually advertise with them, you'll actually get eyes on it. We used them to advertise our marathon this year. and we actually got a lot more viewers than we have ever had because they're all like-minded people that are seeing it. So honestly, I would connect you with him if you're interested in talking to him or having him on your show, because his platform is really awesome, and he's local. He's a New Englander.
I don't know if he's the one that was on Rogan, but somebody from Minds was on Rogan, and I remember hearing him speak about just his own personal philosophies and about freedom of speech and
Well, he's worked with Tim Pool. You know Tim Pool?
yeah. Of course, yeah.
He's worked with him, so maybe he was on there talking about it. I don't know, but
I think he was on Rogan's, and I think I saw the same person representing Minds also on Tim Pool, so it might be the same person we're talking about. But what I love when there's a company like that that's out. Like I'd love to hear like who started it, like their own personal philosophies, because in that way I'm like, okay, this is a brand and a company I feel comfortable supporting and telling people to go out, and he's one of them.
Andrew Krapachetz too from Red Balloon. He was a speaker at our national conference. So you're familiar with redballoon.org?
No, I've heard the name. I don't know what it is though.
They're a job board. So they're like the non-woke version of Indeed or Monster. And it's all like patriotic companies that are like-minded like us. So when you're searching, we found our director of operations, our new director of operations through Red Balloon. We had an amazing response, and like everyone that was reaching out to us was a like-minded person who shared our philosophy, who's against mandates, obviously. We want to hire people like that. And so we're doing all of our hiring through Red Balloon now. I can hook you up with Andrew. He'd be a great guest. He's an amazing person. We had him speak at our conference. He's consulted with us as well. And like I said, we advertised on Red Balloon and we're able to find someone to hire. So we're not doing a ton of hiring right now because we're trying to grow. We don't have, the money to hire a huge staff, but we did hire one person recently. And we found him on Red Balloon. So I would encourage you. I know you got to run. I have to run too, actually, right now. So I'm gonna bounce out. But thank you so much for having me, Ricky. I love always coming on your show.
Before I forget, if they follow you and get on the email list, will they know about the new documentary that's coming out also?
Yes, I didn't even talk about that. You can go to shotdead.org or to wethepatriotsusa.org. When it gets closer, why don't we do another interview? Because it's coming out. It's premiering November 9th. We're actually going to have a red carpet premiere on November 9th in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And the reason we're doing it there is that's where one of the families that was featured in the film, it's the 1-year anniversary of their daughter's death from the COVID shot. Their 18-year-old daughter, Trista, died on November 9th, 2022. And so to honor her, on the 1-year anniversary of her death, we're going to premiere this film. Her family's going to be present. Her family's in the film. We're going to do a red carpet premiere. You're invited, Ricky, if you want to come. If you want to tell the people, you want to take a trip out to Oklahoma, Taryn will be emceeing it and on the red carpet interviewing people. So if you wanted to be part of that, Brad of 5 Times August will be performing his song, which is the theme song of our film. So he's going to be performing that live. So we have a whole red carpet event in Tulsa on November 9th. Save the date, shotdead.org, or you can go to wethepatriots.org to get more information about that film coming out.
Awesome. I'm glad I remembered right before I got rid of you.
Thank you. No, well, I'm not really doing a lot of promo for that yet because it's not till November. So people have short memories these days. If I tell someone about a November movie, are they going to remember it in September? No. When it gets closer towards Halloween time and stuff, yeah, that's the time we'll be in heavy promo because that'll be just about a week or two before the event. That's when everybody's going to be talking about it. But yes, I don't mind talking about it. It's just that it's a little ways off, so it's not going to be. People aren't going to remember what I say in September.
I'll put the trailer in the show description for people to check it out.
Thank you.
Obviously, it looks awesome what I've seen so far, and I'm sure it's going to definitely be worth watching once it comes out. And I'll definitely be checking my calendar to see if we can maybe schedule a trip out there. That'd be awesome to hang out. But
I'd love to have you broadcast from there. Set up a little booth outside there, broadcast from the event. You can, seriously, we should start. I didn't even think of doing that, but we should invite some podcasters out, some media out to broadcast the event. Besides, we're going to be broadcasting it, but it doesn't hurt to have other people broadcasting it.
Yeah. The more attention you can bring to these type of events, the better. It's that's why I love having you on, and that's why I keep telling people like support organizations like We the Patriots USA. Everybody that I have sent to you, like some people in my personal life who I'm like, you know what, I don't know, I might not be able to help you, but I'm like, maybe Brian can. I'm like, you've been you've responded to everybody, you've helped everybody as best as you can, and that takes a lot of work, that takes a lot of effort, like you said. Like people, you don't charge people, but you have a family you need to you need to feed, and you have bills that you have to pay. And if you're going to continue doing this, and I mean, there's plenty of people doing evil stuff and not moral stuff making billions. Please
Oh,
support.
they make a ton of money. I mean, look at how much Planned Parenthood raises. I mean, they get ACLU even, which almost all their lawsuits are leftist, all right, and for the evil agendas, although occasionally they throw us a bone. But I mean, they have a litigation budget. Their litigation budget alone is $100 million. And
Wow.
that's not even their, you look at their total organization budget, it's way more than that. Hundreds of millions. They get that, and yet we're filing lawsuits for the good guys, and we can't even get $1 million. Seriously. We don't even have anybody donating 1 million. We don't even have our operating budget. I'll say it publicly. It's publicly available information. And our operating budget is less than $1 million, far less. And we're doing all this. And I've got lawsuits all over the United States. And we're making a major film production. We have 2 podcasts. We hosted a national conference, our vaccine safety awareness marathon. We're doing all that on a shoestring budget. Can you imagine, Ricky, if we actually got someone to step forward with real money and give us real money? Can you imagine what kind of enterprise, what kind of machine we could have to fight down this tyranny? That's just a word to anyone listening who may have the means to help us. I'm going to end on that note because I do have to run, but I thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And people, not even just people who have a lot of money, just people, if you don't have a lot of money, like if everybody listening donated as little as $1, like it can make a difference, So,
well, the reason I say that, the reason I mentioned the larger donors is because unfortunately, when I say that, I don't have thousands of people that step forward and give me $1. I have maybe 50 people that step forward and give me a $5 or $10. And while we appreciate that, each lawsuit can be $50,000 to $100,000. So we do actually need an influx of a rather large influx of money. If there are 1 million people listening, you're each going to give me $1. That's wonderful. But the thing is, I do these interviews, and generally the response rate, believe it or not, in the industry, not just for We the Patriots, industry wide for fundraising is 1%. Generally, when you make a fundraising pitch, you'll get 1% of the people will respond. That's the industry average. If you do more than that, if you do 2%, that's considered phenomenal.
awesome.
So your listeners are not all going to respond. I wish they would. They're not going to. Most of them won't. Times are tough, though. I don't fault anyone. I don't point the finger and say, you should be giving me your money. You don't owe me anything. I am on the front lines fighting for our rights, defending freedoms. But guess what? There's other ways you can help if you can't afford to give money. You could volunteer. You could do other. You can give of yourself in other ways. And not everybody has the money to give to donate to me, and I get that. So I'm not pointing fingers. But if you do have the means and you do really support what we're doing and you're passionate, I really hope you'd consider. I'm willing to have a call with you, a meeting with you. If you have the means to help us in a larger way, I'll even fly back across the country. I'll fly back east. I'll meet with you and sit down with you, and we can go over all the ways you could help us here at We the Patriots USA. But again, thank you for giving me the platform. I got to run, but I'll talk to you soon. Okay.
Take care, Brian.
All right. Bye-bye.